Alright guys, we're going to get started, so if you'll settle down please. I know you're all talking and so excited about this. So here we go. Which one of these statements do you think is false? We're going to go to Isaac. Isaac, which one did you think was false? 4. A bolt of lightning can be 5 times hotter than the sun. That's pretty magnificent, right? So I can see how someone would be like, yeah, I don't know if that's true. Okay, cool. What about you, David? Which one do you think is false? The third one? Rinsing bacon under cold water reduces the amount it shrinks by 50%. That'd be pretty cool. Okay? Caroline, what do you think? 4 as well, same with Isaac. Melissa, what about you? 5. The male hippopotamus is the only mammal that can get pregnant. That'd be kind of crazy. Anyone else want to throw out a guess? Jade, what do you think? Number 2, Americans spend more than $630 million each year on golf balls. Caroline, what do you think about that one? You're on the golf team. How expensive are golf balls? Alright, you ready for it? Drum roll. The false one is 5. You were the imposter. Okay? So, there is an animal where the male gives a baby. Do you know which one it is? Good job. You guys are so smart. But these other ones are actually true. Can you imagine being that person who had hiccups for 68 years? That would be so many. I can't stand hiccups for more than like a minute. Okay? That'd be awful. $630 is a lot of money for just golf balls. Okay? Then we've got some other ones. So, here's my question. Let's just go to number 2. How on earth do they know that? How would someone know how much money someone spent on golf balls? It's a good question. And that's going to be actually what we're going to talk about today. So last time, we started a lesson on statistics, right? We just went over the basics of like mean, median, mode, range, interquartile range, all that stuff, right? Things that you've seen before. Today we're going to get more into the process of how are we gathering data? Where is this data coming from? Should we believe it? We're going to mainly do the vocab, and then we're going to keep building on this for Friday, and we'll kind of go from there, all right? So let's jump ahead to this one. Here's the things we're going to do today. We've got to differentiate between individuals, variables. We're also going to talk about the difference between populations and samples and statistics and parameters. Lots of fun stuff. All right, now, those facts that I got on the front, except for the hippopotamus one, those actually come from Snapple lids. Have you guys ever drinking a Snapple? Oh, really? That's pretty awesome. So you like Snapple, or you just like the facts? Alright, so Snapple, they've got this fun thing where under each lid they give you a fact. And look, like this is real fact 755. There are more chickens in the world than people. That makes sense, because if you think about how many chickens we eat each day, right? We're going to eat a lot of chickens, right? Okay? Butterflies taste with their hind feet. That's cool to know. On average, a human being will spend 2 weeks kissing in his or her lifetime. That's 14 days. That's a lot of hours just designated to kissing. But okay. Now my question is, how does Snapple know some of these things? Like, maybe some of these are just scientific facts. But how would they know that? Are they just following people around with a timer being like, okay, they're kissing for 3 seconds, add that to the list. Okay, 5 seconds, right? That would be awkward. Okay? Are they doing that? No, obviously. So how are they getting this data? That's what we're going to talk about today. Let me tell you about some studies that I found. Do you guys ever hear on the news where they're like, a new study suggests that? Like, good luck, right? Seems like studies are coming out all the time, right? For example, this is one from the Seattle Times. It was a study that said drinking coffee helps you to live longer, healthier lives. Whereas another study here says drinking piping hot tea doubles the chance of getting cancer. Don't those seem to kind of contradict themselves? One was tea, one was coffee, so maybe they're different. This one talks about which vegetables are most likely to have pesticides on them. and it said that strawberries and spinach were the ones most likely to have those. So here's my question. We're not going to debate these things, but we're going to ask about where are they getting their data from, how did they make these conclusions, and is this reliable? Okay? That's what we're going to get into today, as well as Friday. Fun stuff like that, which I think is really applicable to you in your life, because you're going to be bombarded with statistics and studies and things in your life, and it's good for you to be a little skeptical until you make sure it's properly done. Alright, let's actually start with something fun here. I need a volunteer. Volunteer, don't look at me. Alright, Nellie, you're our volunteer. Thanks for volunteering. Hey, Nellie, what is something you're interested in? What do you like to do for fun, or what's interesting to you? You don't know? You've got to know. What's your favorite show? Like, if you could be on your phone watching Netflix right now, or Hulu, what would you be watching? You like watching Netflix? Hulu? What do you do for fun? That's what you do for fun? Okay, let's go with babysitting, okay? I'm going to go with that. Even though Nellie might not enjoy that, babysitting. How many of you guys have babysat in the last maybe year? Okay, cool. So let's say Nellie's like, man, I'm babysitting all the time. I'm curious to know how many people at Hunter babysit, okay? And let's narrow it down, because this class, we're all juniors here, right? Is there any sophomores? So maybe Nellie wants to say, how many juniors at Hunter High School babysit either their siblings or their cousins? Okay? Alright, what we're going to talk about is how to break that down so we identify the population, the individuals, and the variable. Now the population is the entire group you're trying to find information about. So, Nellie, who are you trying to find information about? What did we say in this? I forgot a word. How many who? There we go. So our population here is going to refer to these juniors, all right? We're trying to talk to juniors. How are you going to find out? You're going to have to go and talk to them, right? So an individual is just going to be one of those people. So that would be like, so Nellie turns to Antonio and says, hey, have you ever had a babysit in the last year? What would you say? Yeah, so Antonio is a yes. Asking just one junior is going to be an individual, okay? Then she goes to Braylon and says, Braylon, do you ever have to babysit? Said, nope. She says, lucky. All right. Now the variable is a characteristic that we're trying to find out. In this case, what is a characteristic? Whether they babysit or not, right? So that's just an example of this, okay? Now, what are some different variables that we could ask about? Like, for example, in this classroom, what, like, if I were to go onto your student profile, there's different variables that could be on there, like your age, right? We're all about the same age, but let's say add on things like your height or your weight. Those could all be different things that we could do studies about, right? Okay, now let's keep on going here. Uh-oh, you're not supposed to see that yet. I was supposed to delete that. So close your eyes. That was still there from my last class. I thought I redid this, but that's okay. That's completed notes. That's completed notes. Alright, sorry, I had to switch that over real quick to my blank notes. Okay, here's some other facts that I found just doing some research here. U.S. teens age 13 to 18, that'd be you guys, right? You're all age 13 to 18. Spend 26.8 hours per week online. That would include on your phone or on a Chromebook or something like that. Do you think that number is about right? Would you say it's higher? Would you say it's lower? How often are you guys on your phone or online? Per day. We broke that down, that'd be about, divide that by 7, that's like between 3 or 4 hours. Are you on your phone about 3 or 4 hours a day? Maybe? I don't know. Okay, see. Well, that's what they said online. What we're going to do is break down the population, the individual, and the variable. Okay, so that first statement, who is it talking about? Who is everyone that it's referring to? You guys are being way too quiet. Just because Mindy and Eleanor aren't here, don't mean you can get away with being quiet. Population is referring to everybody. So who is this talking to? Who is it referring to? The teens, the U.S. teens, right? So we're talking about U.S. teens, but we're not including 19-year-olds apparently, just 13 to 18. Okay? So if I were to just ask one person, who would that person have to be? It'd have to be a teenager, right? A U.S. teenager. But it would just be one of them. Okay, and then what are we interested in knowing about that person? What is the variable? How many hours per week they are online. Okay? That's it. All we're going to do is break that down. Okay? I went to this other website and it said 60% of U.S. adults support legalizing marijuana. Okay? Now what I want you to do is look at that for a minute and think, what is a population? Who would be individuals? And what is the variable here? Okay? Think of that for 10 seconds and I'll call on a few people. Okay, Emma, who did you say the population was? There we go. We're referring to U.S. adults. I think, is an adult 18 or older? Is that like the legal definition of an adult? Okay. All right. So if we're going to talk to an individual, that would just be one of them, right? It would be one U.S. adult. All right, but Isaac, what are we interested in knowing about them? What's the variable?
How many of them support marijuana?
There you go. What proportion of them support legalizing marijuana? Do you see how it's pretty easy to identify the population and the variable? Okay. Let's do this last one. I'm not even going to say anything, but there are two variables on this one. So identify the population, the individual, and what both variables are. I'm going to give you a minute on this one to write that down, okay? All right, David, help me out on this one. What was the population here? All right, so U.S. teens is our population. So if we were to look at an individual, it would just be a teenager, right? So one U.S. teenager. All right, now Oscar, there was two variables in here. Can you tell me what one of the variables was? Yeah, it is dangerous. If they're like, I probably shouldn't do that. And then what was the other variable? They do it anyway, right? Now again, this is something that I just found online, and I think it was from like a decade ago, so maybe that number has changed, right? But that's what this is, okay? Now, side note, I'm just going to say this real quick. I actually just finished reading Edward Snowden's autobiography. Do you know who that is? Edward Snowden, ring a bell to anyone? He was an NSA whistleblower who basically told everyone, hey, the government's spying on you. Do you know that one? Not ringing any bells? All right. Well, anyway, one of the things that he said was that as soon as you put something online, you can't take it down. Like, even if you delete it, it's not deleted, it's just stored somewhere else, and someone else can access it. So just do me a favor. Be smart with what you're posting online. If it's not something you want others to see, then don't do it, okay? It'll save you some grief and heartache later. Okay. That was a tangent. Let's come back to what we're talking about now. I'm going to give you a challenge here, okay? Let's go to, I'm going to have Brian be my person with his fresh haircut. Let's say Brian's our volunteer. I want to know how many hairs are on his head. Is it reasonable for us to spend all day counting one at a time? So what I want you to do is turn to a neighbor. I'm going to give you a minute. I want you to come up with a strategy. What could be a way that we could estimate how many hairs are on his head without having to count every single one of them? Okay, that's your goal. So talk to your neighbor. What's a good strategy? And then we'll talk about it in a minute. So go, strategize. Nelly, you need someone to talk to. You got Courtney, you got Lynn. I need you girls talking. Usually I don't tell people to talk, but I'm telling them to talk. All right, who's got a good strategy? Wait for someone. No? What would be a good strategy here? This is going to be real boring just waiting for someone to speak up. Go ahead, Isaac.
I was saying that you could look up online how many hairs are in the square inch.
Okay, I like that. Well, let's try this. Can I show you something that's actually pretty interesting? My connection is not very good. Let's see. If I were to pull up a new tab here, just Google, and I said, how many hairs are on a human head? What's interesting is it depends on the color, okay? So if I did for someone who was blonde, 150,000. So if you have blonde hair, there's approximately 150,000 hair follicles on your head. Now, look at if I were to try other ones. The average redhead only has 90,000. Let's go to this whole website. I like this. You are born with about 100,000 scalp hair follicles to start with, but it varies with natural hair color. Blondes have an average of 150,000. Red has 90,000. Those with black or brown hair average 110 to 100,000 hairs. So I would estimate that Brian has somewhere between 100,000 and 110,000, right? But how do we know how to trust that? I like your idea of the square inch, though, okay? Can we go back to that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a square inch right here. Could we count how many hair follicles are in a square inch? It'd still take a while, but would it be better than a whole head of hair? Then what would you do if I said, okay, fine, there's, let's say, 10,000 hairs, no, not 10,000, let's say 1,000 hairs in one square inch. Then what would we need to do? Then we'd have to go around his head and figure out how many square inches do we have, right? Why is that strategy a little bit better? Guys, you gotta speak up. This is gonna be a really boring class. Thank you, Isaac. It's a lot faster. Is it gonna be perfect? Maybe not, but it's close enough. Now, here's where I'm gonna draw my picture. There's gonna be things that we want to know about our population. Is it reasonable for us to ask everyone in that population? No, so how are we going to do it? We're going to do a similar approach, but first, let me actually talk about some of my favorite things. How about we talk about this? Who knows what this is? Let me scroll down a bit so you can see it. This was what? Say it louder. This was the World Cup final. This is the most watched sports thing ever, right? Like we think Super Bowl is big in America, but Super Bowl pales in comparison to the World Cup, okay? How many people, so first off, how good are you at soccer, okay? I'm expecting some answers here, okay? When was the last World Cup? Where was it? Good job. And in the final, we have two teams. Who are they? Good job, Louise. He knows his soccer. Who won? France won. They're the reigning World Cup champions. When is the next World Cup? 2022 in? Good job, man. David, where are you at? All right, that's okay. Now, look at this. This is how many people watch the World Cup. How do I even say that number? Who knows how I'd say that? 3 what? Billion. 572 million people watch the World Cup. Okay, how many people live on planet Earth? Yeah, it's like between 7 or 8 billion. Somewhere around there, right? So nearly half of the world tuned in to watch this. Is that a pretty big deal? That's pretty awesome. That was a whole World Cup. It takes like a month or so, a couple weeks. But the actual final, over 1 billion people watch. That's crazy, okay? Now, here's a question. How on earth do they know that? Were people like calling everyone around the world saying, hey, you watched the World Cup? You watched the World Cup? I didn't get a phone call asking me. So how do they know that many people watched it? That's what we're talking about today. Let me show you some other things here. This is a little bit different. Yeah, go ahead. Say that louder, I couldn't hear you.
Computers can just take, like, they could record how many people watch.
Yeah, so that's one thing that's kind of interesting is TVs are changing. Man, how many of you have a standard TV like me? I don't have anything too fancy. But if I go home and I turn on the TV, I've got that little antenna and I get 2, 4, 5, 13 basically. And maybe some other channels in there. Do you know what I mean? If you don't have like Xfinity or you don't have cable, you get the free channels, right? Which is a 2, 4, 5, those ones. Now what's interesting about those ones is do they know who's watching those stations? The answer is no. Like if you have a radio, I don't know if you know how radio works, okay? But they have the tower that's broadcasting the radio. So what stations do you guys listen to? You go listen to the radio? K-Bear 101. I like it. K-Bear 101, they're broadcasting, they send it out, but do they know how many people are tuned in? So if I have a radio and I tune into K-Bear 101, there's not a way for them to track that. So they used to have to they'd have different ways they didn't know who was listening. It's changing now if people have with the newer Xfinity or what is the other thing called? What are some other cable TV? DirecTV, thank you. Those ones, that's starting to change a little bit, but for a while they didn't know, okay? Here's some other things. These are people watching different shows. This was popular about 4 years ago. Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, This Is Us. Do you watch any of these shows? This is what was. I watched Stranger Things. That was mine. Here are the 10 most popular sports in the world. Now, when it's talking about football, it's not talking about American football. Do you know what that's talking about? It's talking about soccer. This is the estimated global fans in millions. Do you guys even know what cricket is? May I go? It's really popular in India. It's also in a lot of other countries play it, like in England and South Africa and Australia. It's kind of like baseball, but it's a little bit different. So when we were in America, we're like, we don't want your sports. We're going to play our own sport and call it baseball. It's kind of like our modified version, okay? And as you come down, you look at all these other ones. Our sports that are really popular aren't nearly as popular as some of the other worldwide sports. But again, how are they figuring this out? And the answer is samples. Now, this is a sample lady at Costco. Have you guys ever gone to a store